My name is Ximena Nelson. I am a professor in the School of Biological Sciences at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch in New Zealand. And yeah, in the background, I guess I have a Jackie Dragon lizard, which was one of the animals that I worked in my postdoc. I have worked with birds, spiders, snakes, pretty much anything actually, mammals. But most of my work is on birds and spiders. So jumping spiders are a little unusual compared with other spiders. First of all, they don't build webs. So they're just wandering around the habitat, the environment, just like you or I would. And just like you or I would, in fact, they use their eyes to be able to locate things, not crash into things, find their food. And in fact, they've got vision that's about as good as that of a cat. So although they only measure a few millimeters, maybe a centimeter for a big one, they can see really, really well. And they seem to be using these eyes to do some pretty tricky behaviors. And basically, I'm just looking at the visually based behaviors that they're using, specifically investigating cognition or their ability to make complex decisions. So say I'm a spider or a jumping spider, and I happen to be a spider that eats other spiders. What that means is that my dinner could potentially make me its dinner, right? So essentially, it's really dangerous for me to be hunting other spiders. But there are some jumping spiders that do hunt other spiders. And so they've got to be really careful about how they approach that spider, because the tables could turn pretty dramatically. So the other thing to bear in mind is that these spiders are wandering around in a habitat which could also be very complicated. So they're only about a centimeter long, and they could be living in a place like a rainforest. So there are leaves everywhere, there's branches, there's debris, and they might, for example, spot a spider at a distance, say a web building spider that's in its web. And that spider could be like a meter away, quite literally. And it's sitting on its web, and the jumping spider sees it from that distance and goes, okay, well, I'm going to try and hunt that spider, which could actually be a lot bigger than itself. And it's got to get to that web spider. So it might have to take quite a long and convoluted route to get there. Sometimes we call that a detour. And in so doing, in trying to get to that web and the web spider that's in that web, they might lose sight. In fact, they're very likely to lose sight of the web spider, because remember, there are branches and leaves and stuff everywhere. So does that mean that the jumping spider has essentially some sort of a mental map? Like if you close your eyes, you can visualize a room that you're in, and maybe the building that within, in which that room is, and you might be able to walk down the corridor, and you could imagine yourself doing that without too many accidents. Right? Because we've got this huge, ability with a very large brain, and we've got good eyesight. But it seems like the evidence suggests that the jumping spiders have got something pretty similar. So we're trying to test whether or not that is actually the case. We were in Malaysia in a place called the Cameron Highlands, and that's a rainforest at reasonably high altitude. And we were looking at a species called Portia labiata. And Portia labiata is a species that hunts other spiders, both other jumping spiders, which is even more dangerous because jumping spiders can see really well, as well as web spiders. And when we were in the field, we saw a number of Portia hunting. And in one particular instance, we saw this Portia hunt, and she went on this long detour to get to the web spider. But when she ended up, when she finished the detour, she ended up essentially, you've got a web spider. It was an orb web, so it was a round kind of web. And obviously, it's got attachment points to various leaves and twigs and bits and pieces in the forest. And Portia successfully managed to get, from one leaf to another, from one twig to the next and whatever, to get to the web at a good distance where she could actually jump on the spider that was in the hub of the silk nest. So the shortest distance to the spider, essentially. But she ended up being on the wrong side of the web. So the spider was on one side of the web and Portia ended up on the other side of the web. And then we saw the most amazing behavior where Portia essentially had to get through the web to get to the right side so she could jump on the spider. And what she did is she, and I'm speaking about Portia as being a female because it was a female, and typically it's the females who do these hunts. And she essentially went through the silk, they're called radials, so the silks that are going like spokes on a wheel on a bicycle, for example, that hold the web, essentially the structure of the web. She had to get through those, and she essentially used a couple of pairs of legs. She's got a few of them, so she used a couple of pairs of legs to essentially pin those radials and hold them taut, as she then, convoluted herself and just twisted herself really carefully through the silk, kind of like Catherine Zeta-Jones in Entrapment with the lasers and the bank vault. And it was identical to that, really. But this was a spider, and it wasn't, it faked. It was for real. Yeah, it was amazing. And she got through the web without vibrating the web at all. So the spider had no idea that Portia had done this. And then Portia got to the correct side of the web and then jumped, and the spider was toast. So it was pretty exciting to watch. We have designed some experiments. I think we did some field work about a month ago, and I think based on that field work, we might redesign our experiments a little bit. We kind of started off with some fairly abstract mazes, if you like, which the spiders could, potentially use alternative routes to get to a potential prey. But I think we're probably going to go a bit more back to basics now and just essentially 3D print forest and see actually what does the spider do, and are there consistent sort of routines? Are they always picking the shortest route or the most direct route, or the route that's, I don't know, that's definitely easier, or whatever it might be. It certainly does help us learn about ourselves, but I think what drives me is that it helps us become a bit more humble, I think. We like to think of ourselves as super special and having all these unique traits. And I think the more we understand that non-human animals have very similar traits to us, then that helps us hopefully respect the world and the life within the world a little bit more. I mean, if a jumping spider can do, plan ahead of time and can do these really clever techniques to be able to, for example, cross from one side of the web to another, which had never been seen before, by the way, then if that's just a mere jumping spider, then maybe we should take a closer look at ourselves and go, okay, well, maybe we are just one species among many. I knew that I wanted to do zoology from the first time I heard the word. So I've been really lucky. And most people, when they go to university, they don't have any idea really whether or not they want to do that, or if they wanted to do that in the first place, and whether or not they're going to continue doing it. I was really fortunate that, the first time I heard the word zoology when I was about 12, I knew immediately, sort of instinctively, what it meant, and I knew that was what I was going to be. So I was really lucky in that sense. But behavior specifically, and spiders even more so, was really just because I had a great teacher who at university who was interested in animal behavior and in fact was a spider person. And I wanted to work with him. So I did my master's degree with him. And spiders, I've never really thought about spiders, but I wanted to work with him, and he worked with spiders. And yeah, as I've told many of my own students, once you start working with jumping spiders, it's all over. Like you're just hooked for life. And that's exactly what happened to me.